17 to 14. Cowboys out in front. Starr begins the count. Takes the snap. He's got the quarterback sneaking. He gets the touchdown. And the Green Bay Packers are going to be world champions.
All right, what's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on Packernet.com. You can find me on Twitter at Packers_access. If you'd like to email the show, you can send a message to PackersTotalAccess@gmail.com. And you can text the show at 865-658-5824. We're joined tonight with Jacob from the Packernet Fantasy Podcast. We got a couple other people hopping on with us, so we're excited to just get on here and talk a little off season. You know, I think now, Jacob, we're 23 days away from Packers training camp. Ooh. And man, I am fired up for training camp, dude. There's going to be a lot of storylines. We're going to be watching those camp battles like crazy, whether it's right tackle, number 1, number 2, and slot receiver, the slot corner position, safety. You know, are they going to roll with Savage or does he get unseated? Like, it's going to be very interesting, man. But we are also tonight going to kind of talk a little Chicago Bears, man. We're going to talk a little rivalry, I should say. I don't want this to turn into a Bears podcast, first and foremost, right? But you know, when it comes to Twitter right now, man, it's been loud this offseason, Jacob, and I think it's good for the rivalry that these teams are. I don't want to say close as far as talent and you know how they may or may not perform. But I will say it's closer than it has been, you know, in the past. So it seems like a lot of people think this is the year that the Bears are going to pass up the Packers. I giggle at that thought because this is a 13-win team minus Aaron Rodgers. It's a big minus. But if Jordan Love can play top 15, maybe even top 10 quarterback play, I think the Bears fans are going to be crying again this year. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I mean, the Bears still suck. That is going to ring ever true. It's an evergreen statement. And we'll go through a little bit of those examples later. I've got some interesting notes to peek through. But yeah, man, we talked about safety as well. We'll go through some safety snap counts if we have some time because we did obviously lose Amos. And then after that, it's like, who's going to step up? We'll look at some of the snap counts for those guys because it was surprising how much Savage did play last year. And we'll see if maybe he can go back to the Savage of old. I hate to say that, but maybe like Savage year 2. I don't, you know, we'll discuss that. But I'm excited to talk football, and as always, it's Sunday. How many Sundays? I think we only have like 6 Sundays now, 7 Sundays until we have actual Packer football. I mean, come on now, it's getting there.
Definitely. Dakota in the chat says, "Heck yeah, they'll be crying." I'm currently fighting with them dummies on Twitter right now. You and Ryan Schlip fighting the good fight. We got Tim in Green Bay on the line. Tim, we're gonna go to you in just a second, buddy. First things first, though, let's get this thing cranked up right, man. I found a little video that came from the Packers Legacy documentary. It's about 3 minutes long, but I think it's worth the listen, even for you guys on the podcast. Just kind of talking about the very, very early stages of the Green Bay Chicago Bears rivalry. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. We're going to check this out real quick. Again, you can find this for free on the Packers YouTube page. They've got, I don't know how many episodes there are, but this was a really, really cool find here. So let's just check it out. And I'd say a lot of you guys and gals probably never heard of the Lumberjack Band, but this is a really cool story. So let's go ahead and share the screen and check it out. Here we go.
Know what was going on down in Chicago just seconds after it occurred down there.
Here's this little city playing in this big league, and they're holding their own. That's what drew people to the Packers.
Hold their own they do, much to the chagrin of many teams, one in particular.
Any Packer-Bear game was bigger than any other game.
Chicago with George Halas, that was a step up for the Packers to be able to play them.
November 27th, 1921. Several hundred fans in a makeshift band with 20 horn players and a handful of drummers descend on Chicago for the first Packers-Bears football game.
It wasn't out of George Halas's fondness for the city, Green Bay, or anything.
He needed to win, and he probably needed another gate. There were large contingents of Packer fans going down there. And they met at midnight at the Elks Club in downtown Green Bay, marched to the Chicago Northwestern Depot, caught a train to Chicago. They didn't get a wink of sleep.
Stumbling off a midnight train, the self-proclaimed Lumberjack Band marched through the loop and out to Cubs Park, causing a ruckus along the way.
It's just a regular band from around Green Bay, and they'd play football songs and stuff like that.
They drank all the way down to Chicago on the train, got off the train, and started marching through the loop, playing their instruments. They marched through several hotel lobbies, including the Packers.
They dressed like lumberjacks, and it was a great band.
The two first coaches, George Halas, Curly Lambeau, they were players at the time. In that game in 1921, George Halas scored the last touchdown for the Bears.
They beat us pretty good that first game, 20-0, but a rivalry was started.
The Packers become the biggest draw on the Bears' schedule. As rivalrous as it is,
Halas and Lambeau really didn't care for one another.
Both George Halas, the founder of the Bears, and Curly were showmen, let's face it. And they made it a point never to shake hands after a game.
They were two ultimate competitors and wanted to beat each other so bad that they would do whatever it took.
There's some misconceptions about George Halas and how he was this great friend of the Packers. He was when it benefited his bottom line. He wasn't necessarily when it didn't benefit his bottom line.
George and Curly Lambeau were entirely two different characters altogether. First of all, Lambeau was more a gentleman on the sidelines than most coaches. He got riled up once in a while. And over on the other side was old George Halas, and he was an official baiter. He was always cursing them out. The biggest problem that the officials had with George Halas, he wanted to follow the team down the field, clear down to the end zone, and they had a hard time keeping him on the bench. There are times he was a raving maniac.
At first, Chicago really didn't want to come to Green Bay because the attendance wasn't going to be comparable to Chicago.
By the mid-20s, George Halas wanted them to come to Chicago and play there twice a season because they were drawing better than any other team that he was bringing in.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, man, that little Green Bay, they were the biggest draw for the big bad Chicago Bears, right? That that literally George Halas was kind of forced. Listen, we can't afford not to put them on the schedule, right? Yeah. Pretty cool stuff, man. Pretty cool stuff. And we got Tim live in Green Bay. How you doing tonight, Tim?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Oh, doing good, man. Doing good. What you think about that little video there, man? I'm sure you've seen that before. Pretty cool story, though. You talk about the lumberjack band drinking all night, taking the train down to Chicago, then marching around the city, just raising HE double hockey stick, right?
Man, that's just classic, right? Classic right there. And you know what's funny is I like what they said about Halas being a raving maniac on the sidelines. It's almost like the Bears fans now are channeling their inner Halas right now because they're all raving maniacs right now. Except I don't think Halas was as delusional as Bears fans are right now.
There it is. There it is.
Mic
Jacob,
drop.
Yeah. Jacob, you were running some numbers earlier, right? And just kind of talking about the rivalry and where it stands. I know you had a couple of numbers that conflicted with each other a little bit. I believe we've got the right number. We may be off one or two games here, but let's go ahead and talk about those numbers.
Yeah, from what I could tell, I got a couple conflicting ones, but 105, 95, and 6 seems to be the most current number, which, I mean, that alone. I also saw this random, I was looking for that number, and they had this, I clicked on this website, and they did like a moving chart of where the Bears wins versus the Packers wins in franchise history, how they kind of started. Bears got a big head start on us, guys. It stinks, but we definitely have climbed and definitely made a rebound in basically since 91. And on, and you look at that, how drastically we've peaked and they've went down. I mean, in the last, 40 games, we're a good 90% winners. And it's just, Aaron Rodgers, sorry, buddy, that he owns you. He does still. And then Brett kind of owned you. And I only hope, what a fitting start to Jordan Love's career that he plays his first opening game. Isn't it in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah. Yep.
Let's go. Let's go, buddy.
Chicago, yeah.
Come on, show us what you got.
Just go ahead and transfer that ownership right over to number 10.
Right?
That's what we need to see happen. So,
yeah.
There was something else I was going to ask you about the numbers. Did you say something? What was it you said about quarterbacks? Was it? You have that in front of you right now?
I do, actually. So if we want to talk about quarterbacks and how bad the Bears quarterbacks are, I shouldn't. say bad.
How about
That's
how
weird.
many quarterbacks there are?
I was going to say, it's not necessarily how bad they were. It's just how many bad ones that they really had. So let's go ahead. I can name them. And I'm going to go off by starting by 1991, which obviously is when Brett Favre came to Green Bay. So we'll start there, just to be fair. That year, Jim Harbaugh played all 16 games. Good for you, Jim. Jim Harbaugh in 1992 played 13, followed by Peter Tom Willis with 2 and William Furrer with 1. Jim Harbaugh in 1993 started 15 games, followed by Peter Tom Willis with 1. 94, Steve Walsh, 11 games, followed by Eric Kramer with 5. 95, Eric Kramer, all 16 games. 1996, Dave Craig, remember him? 12 wins, Eric Kramer with 4 games. 1997, Eric Kramer 13, Rick Meyer 3. 1998, Eric Kramer 8, Steve Strensom 7. Moses Marino had 1 start. 1999, Shane Matthews 7 starts. Cade McCown, here we are. Jim Miller 3 starts. 2000, Cade McCown is now, or McNown, idiot, 9 starts. Shane Matthews 5 starts. Jim Miller 2 starts. 2001, Jim Miller 13 starts. Shane Matthews 3 starts. 2002, Jim Miller 8 starts. Chris Chandler 7 starts. Henry Burris 1 start. 2003, they got Cordell Stewart, guys. They're going to win the Super Bowl, except for he only played for 7 games. Chris Chandler 6 games. Rex Grossman, we got a Rex Grossman sighting. In 2003, followed by 2004, Craig Krenzel 5 starts. Chad Hutchinson, remember him, 5 games. Jonathan Quinn 3 games. Rex Grossman again 3 games. 2005, Kyle Orton's in the building with 15 games started with Rex Grossman's 1. Let me flip to my second page. 2006, Rex Grossman's on the scene. He gets all 16 games. Congratulations. Good for you, buddy. 2007, Rex Grossman gets 7 games, followed by Brian Greasy with 6 games, and then Kyle Orton coming up the tailpipe with 3. 2008, Kyle Orton wins back the job, 15 games. Rex Grossman gets 1. God, that's pathetic. 2009, Jay Cutler. Jay, I'm the most overrated quarterback in NFL history. Cutler, 16 games. 2010, Jay Cutler has 15 games. Todd Collins has 1. 2011, Jay Cutler has 10 games. Caleb Haney, 4. Josh McCown's back for 2 games. 2012, Jay Cutler, 15 games. Jason Campbell, 1 game. 2013, Jay Cutler, 11 games. Josh McCown, 5 games. 2014, Jay Cutler, 15 games. Jimmy Clausen, 1 game. 2015, Jay Cutler, 15 games. Jimmy Clausen, 1 game. 2016, Matt Barkley, remember that? Jay Cutler, 5 games. Brian Hoyer, 5 games. 2017, guess who's there? Big, you-know-what, Mitch. Mitchell Trubisky, Mike Glennon, 4 games. 2018, Mitchell Trubisky has 14 games with Chase Daniel at 2. 2019, Mitch Trubisky, 15 games. Chase Daniel, 1. 2020, Mitch Trubisky. Nick Foles, quarterback winning, Super Bowl winning. Nick Foles with 7 games. 2021, Mr. looking like a catfish guy. 10 games for Justin Fields. 21, followed by Andy Dalton, followed by Nick Foles with 1 game. 2022, finally, Justin Fields starts 15 games. Trevor Siemian gets 1 game, and our Nathan Peterman gets 1 game. Great. That was
unbelievable. And how many did we have? Who did we have during that?
I think technically, basically 2. Officially 6 if you count injuries and whatnot. And those are 1 game offs kind of stuff. Yeah. We're talking about Matt Flynn's. Who's the other one? Very, very non. I think Matt Flynn was the most notable one. That was our backup.
What a ride that was.
That guy made the NFL pay him so much money for no reason. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
To go to Seattle for them to draft Russell.
Was it Seattle? And then they basically paid him like $20 million or something. What? And
then they drafted Russ.
Yeah, good for you, man.
My goodness, man. And he did, if I remember correctly, didn't Flynn tie the single game touchdown passing record?
7, wasn't it?
Yeah.
7?
Yeah. And Green Bay, he literally came in 1 game and said, I was like, throw him the book, give him the checkbook.
Give him that money.
I love it, dude. I love it. And you wonder why
reminiscent to that.
Go ahead.
That was reminiscent to that year that Tim Tebow had a couple years back when he was just on this streak and just caught fire. And that was Matt Flynn. He just couldn't miss. The dude was lights out.
Yeah. Yeah, just playing within the system. And you guys wonder, and why are you surprised that Bears fans are so miserable on Twitter? I mean, come on, dude. You kidding me? And John in the chat said Hundley beat the Bears. Is he talking about
Brett?
Did Brett Hundley really beat?
I'm
Holy
sure he
cow.
did. Yeah,
I'm sure he did. We don't even need to fact check it. I'm sure he did.
Fact check true.
Right.
I don't need
Love it,
Snopes,
love it,
so
love
that's true.
Hey, tell me, Tim, what's on your mind tonight, dude? You got anything you wanna hit on here? Anything that's at the forefront as far as we're coming up on training camp. I know we chatted just a few days ago, but what's on your mind tonight?
It's interesting. You guys were talking a little bit about safety, and I've been thinking about. I got my little short list of some players that I got my eye on that I really want to pay extra attention to this year going into camp. And of course, like number one on my list is Darnell Savage. I guess my question for you guys is, how do you see this safety room shaping up? I think of guys like obviously Rudy Ford comes to mind as someone who can fill that role possibly. Jonathan Owens, I haven't seen much of him. I'm not super familiar with him. But what about guys like yeah, Mr. Biles, yeah. The question really was though is like, what about like Dallin Levitt and Ennis Gaines, some of these special teamer guys that we see? What about do you guys see them making this team A and B actually playing some snaps back there, either strong or weak side safety?
Go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, so I was going to say if I could jump in just to kind of bounce off of that topic there, Tim. So we're losing Adrian Amos. We talked about that last episode, I believe. Adrian Amos had 977 snaps on defense. That was number one about any defensive player last year total. So he's gone, right? We scrap that. Rudy Ford had 443 snaps at safety, followed by Darnell Savage. Well, I should say Darnell Savage had 819. I did not realize that dude played that many snaps last year. That being said, after that, we had Tariq Carpenter fill in for 17 snaps. Levitt took one. Abernathy took one. And then I think there was a couple other garbage snaps for some other guys. But that, like I said, I have to think Savage is going in there and he's going to take over in the starting role. I don't know whether he'd be the free or the strong or what that, I don't know if that bases basically off of, I would have to think Rudy Ford would be number two. I don't know. He seemed like he graded out well, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have it in front of me, but I thought since he basically was the starter, it was a lot better than when he wasn't. And then I know that also we got guys like, was it Anthony Johnson Jr.? Is that right? People have hopes for him, high hopes for him. I know that he fell a little bit in that draft and we've got quote unquote another steal there, but I'm safety is definitely probably the position that I'm most, I don't know about, I don't know what to think.
I agree. I mean, what about Tariq Carpenter? Like he's listed as a linebacker now, right?
Well, I was going to say
they've moved him.
It sounds like what Ryan said on his podcast. They just basically are like, we drafted this guy. We gave him a draft pick. We don't want to let him go. Maybe he's a safety now. Maybe he's a linebacker.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I kind of see Tariq Carpenter a little bit different. I see him as, you guys heard me mention big nickel the other day, right? I could see him playing a little more big nickel. Well, now that Tariq Carpenter is a linebacker, it wouldn't technically be a big nickel, right? And I think you'll see at least another year or two before he makes a step in the right direction. I think he's going to be a special teams guy. He seems to have beefed up just a touch. As far as the safety position, and we got Ryan Schlip joining us here. Appreciate you hopping on. We're just talking a little safety here. So I think you got to kind of, when you look at the people they added, you added Jonathan Owens, right? Or as you guys said, Mr. Biles. And you got Tarvarius Moore. Who did they add first? They added Tarvarius Moore,
I thought.
Right? Yeah. So that shows you they have more value in Moore than they did Jonathan Owens. Might not have been much, but it was there. We know that Tarvarius Moore had pretty good combine numbers, if I remember correctly. He's one of those speed guys, quick twitch, that type of thing. A lot more upside rather than, just someone who's just ready to play right now. Now, when you look at what the Packers did defensively, we talked about the numbers the other day. And as far as what kind of defense they played, what kind of coverage they played cover 3, 36.1% of the time. They played quarters, 16.6% of the time. They played quarter, half, or cover 6, 13.1% of the time. So you're going to see that too high look like we've been seeing this Fangio style. Here's the thing that Greg Cosell was talking about the other day, and I seen it all year last year, and hearing Greg Cosell said it really kind of confirmed it for me. When you're playing this Fangio style, you don't want to tip your hand pre-snap. You want to keep those guys up on the shelf and show the same exact look every single play. What I mean by that is there's no early rotation. There's some, but you want to minimize that. You want the quarterback to have as little information as possible pre-snap. Now, that's why sometimes they're kind of caught on their heels as far as, they be in the defense. But if that's the case, you no longer have a free safety and a strong safety. And this is what Greg Cosell talked about. In the past, you had a strong safety that always lined up on the tight end side of the field. If the tight end lined up on the left, then that safety would flip and he would be on the tight end side of the field. Now, in this Fangio style, you're wanting to disguise that complete look. So the safeties have to be very interchangeable. And that's what you've seen last year with Green Bay. That's why you always seen Rudy Ford on the left side of the field, and you've seen, the other safety, which was Adrian Amos, on the right side of the field, because you want to provide that same type of look. Now, you may have some early rotation, a little bit of sugar and pre-snap, but when it comes down to that, the way I see the safeties, Rudy Ford is your left safety. It's so silly saying that. He would be your traditional free safety because typically the tight end is on the right side of the formation, although none of that matters with all the motion that goes on in today's NFL anyway. But Rudy Ford is who I would have starting free safety or on the left side from the offense's perspective. And then I would have Darnell Savage on the right. I shouldn't say I would have, but the coaching staff they're going to play Darnell Savage. We know this. There's 8 million reasons why they're going to play him, right? So he's going to be on the right side. I think that's what you start with. I think personally second is going to be Tarvarius Moore. And I don't think it's going to be a case where it's like, okay, Tarvarius, if Rudy goes down, you're going in for him. But if Savage goes down, we're going to put in Jonathan Owens. I think it'll be Tarvarius Moore third on that depth chart. And then I think you'll see Jonathan Owens fourth. That's just kind of how I see it. But Anthony Johnson, if I remember correctly, granted it was OTAs, there was some people a little bit impressed with him. The few members of the media that was there, it was like he showed flashes. He showed some athleticism. And I know that when he was drafted, when we were sitting there live on draft night, I was kind of like, hey, this guy, he wasn't my top safety pick, but it was good value for where he was picked. But Ryan, basically what Tim was asking is, how do you see the safety room shaking out? Is there anything there you disagree with? How do you see it? What are we overlooking here?
No, I mean, the only thing that's tough for me when I looked at safety was, if you asked me individually, is this person going to make the roster as a safety? I would say yes, more often than we are going to have spots available. So that's going to be, I think, of all the positions, one of the toughest ones to cut down because, like you said, I mean, Savage and Ford, that's obvious. Moore and Owens, yeah, they're going to make it. What about Anthony Johnson? Well, of course. What about Dallin Levitt? Well, yeah, of course. We're not going to have 6 safeties, though.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to need more time to flesh that out, and hopefully we get some answers in training camp. But I've got about 6 yeses, and I think we got about 4 spots. So I don't know how that's all going to shake out.
Yeah.
And we can't make them all linebackers. So
right, yeah, we can't make them all move to linebacker.
Yeah, and last year, according to my board, we carried 5 out of camp. Right now, could it be something that if Eric Stokes isn't healthy, and they have to start him on the PUP list, then maybe they just carry 4 corners, knowing that these safeties could fill in a pinch at the dime, and then you could always activate one if things kind of go haywire. Now, Dallin Levitt, like you said, that's a big special teams contributor according to Rich Bisaccia, right? So it's going to get interesting. You're exactly right, Ryan. You look at the numbers, you go, okay, if we keep 5 like last year, then somebody's not going to make this roster. Me personally, I think that would be Jonathan Owens, but Simone, she's liable to go in the room and hurt some people with that athleticism. I just see her in there choke slamming Coach LaFleur, right in the middle of the.
Can she play safety?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, man. It's interesting though, because there was people talking about it on Twitter. I think it was last week. They're like, how's the safety room going to shake out? And it's one of the things I pointed out, and I think I actually commented on one of your tweets, Ryan. It's like if there's one thing that Brian Gutekunst does well, he finds great value in free agency, right? I mean, we've seen it with Russell Douglas. We've seen it with Devondre Campbell. We've seen it with Keyshawn Nixon, right? I wouldn't be surprised if Tarvarius Moore, Jonathan Owens kind of comes on the scene here and contributes. Hopefully it's not because an injury happened to the 2 starters, but I wouldn't be surprised if one of those guys shake out and be they're a good football player. And understand the reason they go out and sign these guys is because they had a high draft grade on them. When I say high, I'm not saying they were a first or a second round pick, but they simply look at the score that's on them, the grade that they had on them, and said, hey, look, this is someone who's going to be an upgrade. It's kind of that old Bill Walsh mentality. Reading this Bill Walsh book, one of the things they did with that whole system they used building a roster in San Francisco way back in the day, he had a goal every offseason that he was going to make 10 additions to the team before training camp that would improve the team, not just bodies, that would improve the team, that would be better than someone on the roster. He set that goal for himself. And that's kind of the cloth that Brian Gutekunst is cut from, coming from Ted Thompson, coming from Ron Wolf. And, of course, Ron Wolf cut his teeth in the Oakland organization, which is the same organization that Bill Walsh actually got his start in. So, interesting stuff, though, man. Safety is going to be fun. It's going to be very, very cool to see how that unfolds. And what I'm finding myself doing here, Ryan, is, we're a little deeper than we thought. We talked about edge the other day. It's like, who's gonna get cut off out of the edge position, right? I mean, you got Kingsley Enagbare, you added Van Ness, you've obviously got Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary, you got Jonathan Garvin, that's Jacob's favorite player right now, and so it's just like you've also got Cox, right? Brenton Cox. So it's like, what are you gonna do here, dude? You seem pretty deep at these positions.
Do you want snap counts on those guys last year, just real quick? Because this kind of shocked me. Gary, our stud of all studs, 378. That's it. And that's shocking when you think about how the defense, like without that guy, it's a whole different defense. But even
and they got better down the stretch.
And we got better. Exactly. Yeah. And so here I'll go in. Preston, 825. That makes sense. And Enagbare had 465 snaps compared to Gary's 378. Garvin, Mr. I'm too good to go to camp. Garvin, 194 snaps. That's a lot. And then Ladarius Hamilton had 24, and then Kobe Jones randomly had 7. So I mean, there's snaps to be had. I mean, a lot of them. And imagine if you let's replace Garvin's snaps and Hamilton's and Enigbare's and give those to Van Ness, and oh my God! And then you think of what, obviously Gary, if he's healthy, should have a good solid 800 plus snaps. I mean, I can't wait for that.
Yeah. Definitely. And, Goody's also kind of protected himself, too, that if for some reason they got into a pinch, they only carried 4 edge defenders and they needed an extra one, Quay Walker could play that edge. That's something that we've seen a little bit of last year, that he could, whether they were trying to show an over or under look, he could kind of line up on the line of scrimmage and play that Sam, if you will, and provide that edge material. So, with that being said, let's move on to the next topic. Jacob, you brought this up. Brian, I thought this was really cool, man. I'm going to try to share the screen here. I want you guys to see this image. And do you remember who shared this, Jacob, with you?
It was one of those NFL sites.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, what we got here, guys,
I believe the game day, something like that.
Yeah. It's covered up a little bit at the bottom, so I'll read the last ones. But this is according to ChatGPT, right? This is the
Come on, Ryan. That's shout out to you.
It's the people that Ryan trusts with his checkbook here. They balance his checkbook every day and all that, right?
That's who I invest with.
Yeah, according to ChatGPT, top 10 free agent signings of all time. Number 1, Mr. Reggie White. Number 2, Deion Sanders, both with the San Francisco 49ers and Dallas Cowboys. Number 3, Peyton Manning to the Broncos. Number 4, Drew Brees to the Saints. Number 5, Tom Brady to the Bucks. Number 6, Charles Woodson to the Packers. Number 7, Kurt Warner to the Rams. Number 8, Julius Peppers to the Carolina Panthers, which I'm assuming that's him going back to the Panthers, which like Jacob pointed out, you could count that as a Packer too. I mean, he was signed by the Packers as an edge rusher. And then number 9 to Tampa, Ndamukong Suh. And then number 10, Reggie White to Philly. And we kind of scoffed at that a little bit, like, wait a minute. No, he was drafted by Philly. Actually, he was drafted in the supplemental draft because he played, if I remember correctly, 1 year in the USFL. What team did he play for, Jacob? You remember?
The Memphis Showboats. One of my favorite teams.
So pretty cool stuff, right? That you've got, like Jacob, you pointed out, that's basically 4 players there that the Packers signed in free agency that you could kind of count towards them there, right? Reggie White, Charles Woodson, Julius Peppers, although they just got Carolina listed. I think we would all agree that was a great signing for the Packers. And then Reggie White again, of course, being at number 10 with Philly. So it's pretty cool, man, for a team that everyone always talks about. They're never active in free agency, right?
Yeah.
So Reggie White, man, Ryan, you were a fan back then, right? When Reggie was signed. What do you remember about Reggie White? What's the first thing that comes to mind, dude?
Well, I know me and my dad always misnamed his move the swim move but that was always our favorite thing. And it was just that he was just unstoppable. And it was just he gets his hooks underneath you and he just threw people around. But I mean, that was a cool thing about Reggie is it's kind of like I don't mean to blaspheme here as far as comparing him to Rashawn, but it's a similar thing in terms of you can't stop him. You know, like eventually he's just going to get there. Yeah. And that was just the best thing about Reggie White is you always felt like you were in a good spot and you were going to have a good defense. I mean, it's almost like a quarterback when you got Aaron Rodgers or something. Like as long as he's on your defense, you got a good defense. And he really, I mean, he raised the bar for that defense so high. It was I don't know. It was just a lot of fun to watch. And like most people most of the guys that we had in the 90s, the only thing that kind of sucks is I didn't appreciate it enough. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, this is just the team that we have. And now that you look back, it's like, dang, dude, I'm never going to see a guy like that again. That's crazy.
Yeah. Very well said. Go ahead, Jake.
I just, like Ryan said, you know, I remember when the Packers won, I have a Wheaties box still with Reggie White on it. I have a Reggie White bar, candy bar that my aunt gave me. She's had it in her. I mean, that thing's got to be infested with all sorts of diseases and whatnot, but it's still in the thing. And I also have like gosh, what am I looking at? I have so many like Reggie White memorabilia things from back in the day, and I feel like they don't necessarily. We still idolize our players like Patrick Mahomes. Oh my God, you know what I mean? But it's like the specialty players. Maybe it's just because Reggie White was that talented, and in my little child brain, I didn't realize that he was that great, that he deserved his own candy bar and his own box cover but he was that great. I mean, when you look back at the stats, he was the Minister of Defense, man. The guy was just an absolute freak of nature. And I just remember that move that Ryan's talking about. I don't think he gave it justice. He would literally just come in. I think it was with his left hand, and he would just straight up, if he got you in the pit, in the armpit, he would just chuck you.
Yeah, and sometimes it wasn't even his hand, which would be more leverage. Sometimes it was just like right here.
Club.
He would just get under you and just flip you.
And if you look
how do you have that much power?
The Super Bowl against the Patriots, I believe it's like the last 3 snaps. He did it. Like maybe it's because the Patriots were like, it's done, it's over, I don't care anymore. Like that tackle was like, dude, you've been kicking my butt all day. I don't want to do this anymore. But I think it's the last 2 or 3 of the snaps. Reggie White got a sack, and it was the same. He just threw this dude. And you can look back even at the Memphis Showboats tape, which there are some out there if you want to find it. It's really hard. But the Philadelphia Eagles, when he was there, same thing. He would just club guys one hand. If he had that plant foot and that strength, I mean, the guy, I would imagine he had to be like a shot put champion because all he does is just basically that, you know, like. Yeah. Anyways, he's a freak of nature.
Yeah, and the move you guys are talking about is actually called the hump move, and I want to get your take in a minute, Tim. The hump move, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And no, we're not talking about Rasheed Walker. We're talking about the hump, the different hump move. Tim, I want to get your take here in just a second, but since you guys brung it up, y'all got me geeking out over here. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Let's share the screen here. Check them out right here.
Here we go.
This is a compilation of the hump move. You ready?
Boom.
Let's see if we can get this thing. Look at this. Bang.
Oh, that's right arm. That's right arm. Dang it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
did it with the
that's my favorite right here. Boom!
Yeah.
Chris Carter.
Oh my God, I remember that. It was right arm. Okay.
Look. Devastation, dude. Unbelievable.
Basically knock you out and then run past you.
They're literally airborne. Like both feet off the ground.
Yeah.
If you watch how he does it, he sinks his hips, takes the outside shoulder, and then just throws them across their body. He makes them think they're going outside, so they pass set for the outside protection, and then he just humps them. Not Rasheed Walker. Yeah. He humps them. Look at that.
It's really a finesse move as much as it is a power move.
Yeah.
It really is. That
combination. That's what I'm talking about. That was the end of the Super Bowl.
Yeah. God, it's good stuff, man. Tim, I don't know how old you are, and you don't have to say if you don't want to. But what do you remember about Reggie White, man? I'm sure did you get a chance to watch him when you were little?
Oh yeah, and the play that sticks out is the one we just saw is when he tossed Chris Carter like a rag doll into Warren Moon. Like, you're in my way, I'll just use you to sack the quarterback, basically. I mean, with one hand once again. But I think when I think of Reggie White, man, I just think of how, you know, a lot of what we think about is he transcended the game. You know, he was bigger than football, man. That guy was just. I don't know. I mean, I get choked up thinking about him, honestly. And he's the kind of guy that you want on your team, the definition of a leader. I think one of the things that sticks out to me is the the total contrast between watching him on the field, just terrorizing these guys, and then knowing who he was as a man, and he's just like polar opposite. And to just see the way he played that game with such ferocity, but he was such a gentle giant, man. And just, man, they don't make them like that anymore, guys. They really don't. We get them once in a while, but I'll tell you, I miss that guy.
Yeah, I was actually lucky enough I was in the house when they retired his jersey. So I went to an autograph session I think it was the Friday night before the game, and I got a chance to meet his wife and his son. And
Reggie White?
Yeah, they were just amazing people. And I've actually got a video. I need to find it. Just like I told y'all, I've shared the Aaron Rodgers' first touchdown pass, his first rushing touchdown film from the stands. I've actually got a video somewhere of them dropping the tarp off of his name and you seeing his number and everything retired. It was really cool. So really good stuff.
Which is still a big deal in Green Bay because we do not just retire numbers willy-nilly here.
Absolutely. There's many
retire Masons.
And you just can't. You can't do that many. You're going to run out of jerseys if you do.
Yeah.
Do you think, Clayton? Do you think they'll retire Masons?
What's that?
Mason.
Oh, Mason.
They'll retire Masons.
See, that's one that I'm talking about. It's like, what other perk do you need other than the all-time scorer in Packer history?
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I don't think it's silly to have to mention it, but again, we get to the point where it's like, guys, we're going to run out of numbers if we keep doing it. You know what I'm saying? But all of them are deserving. But Tim, before we let you go, we got Andy on hold here. Anything else you want to chat about before we let you go? I'm afraid if we go 5 wide here like Talladega, the whole thing's going to crash. You know what I'm saying? So
I can jump off. Absolutely, guys. Just thanks for having me. Looking forward to shareholders meeting. Looking forward to camp. Same old same. Just excited for the year to get started here. And it's going to be a heck of a ride, guys. I got a feeling this year is not going to be short on excitement.
I agree, man. You make sure you get good pictures. I've got my tickets sitting here. I'm just not going to be able to make it up there. So you get good pictures, good videos, and let us know all the inside information you get up there. All right.
Absolutely, guys. Will do. Thanks for having me on, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Tim.
Appreciate you, buddy.
You bet. Bye-bye.
All right. We're going to bring in Andy now, Mr. Andy Monday from Kansas. Andy, how you doing, buddy?
I'm real good. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. We got a packed house here. Sorry you had to wait, but what's on your mind, dude? I know we chatted a little bit offline. What you got going on right now? What are you excited about? Talk to me.
Well, first of all, I hope to finish up here with less back sweat accumulated than the first time I was on. So hopefully that goes a little bit better. I won't tell you if it was better or worse. I'll just keep that part to myself. But good topics, though. I mean, hey, the Reggie White topic, isn't that? It's always seasonal. If you think about it, yeah, it's amazing. People say, well, you kind of go in cycles. What topics you're talking about? When is Reggie White not a pertinent topic? It can be in free agency. It could be regular season. It can be postseason. It can be, the Packers Hall of Fame, pro football. I mean, any time of the year you can really talk about it. The guy was not only an amazing player. I think his free agent contract in '93 was 4 years, $13 million total.
That's crazy.
That was a massive contract. People didn't have any idea why the Packers spent that much money on the guy.
Yeah, and I remember at the time too, hearing, didn't know it at the time, but hearing Mike Holmgren tell the story about how, little bitty Green Bay is not going to be able to sign any free agent. Free agency is literally going to ruin the franchise, this and that. And then, of course, when they made the offer to Reggie White said that he got home one day and had a voicemail, had an answer machine. He played the answer machine. It was Mike Holmgren, and he said,
"God."
All he said was, "Reggie, this is God. I want you to sign in Green Bay." And then, of course, Mike Holmgren said Reggie shows up and he goes, with that deep voice, Mike, that was funny, man. That was funny. So Reggie did some great things down here in the state of Tennessee for sure. So
and I don't know how to compare it to today, but I was just thinking when you guys were talking with Tim, who's been a great guest, I think, too, it would be the equivalent of what? Nick Bosa signing free agent contract with the Lions and then influencing 10 more good players to come to the Lions and then turn them into a dynasty. That's what that would be.
Yeah.
That's a great. It would be the equivalent. The offseason is a good time to talk about the team building and maybe even get into some history. And I've mentioned Q Clayton offline. I I'm not done trying to wall up on Colin Cowherd for some of his recent comments, and I'm glad Ryan's done 2 full episodes, keep them coming, by the way, about just the stupidity things. People don't understand, and I'll go back to the first one that he had, he believes that the Packers are going back to the 70s and 80s Packers. That, very few, few people who are probably podcasting were, alive maybe especially in the early 70s, right? But okay, so if you had a little time here, just at quarterback, okay, and I'm going off of memory here, so maybe I might be a little bit inaccurate, but I think I got it here. After the 1972 season, Coach Dan Devine, who was also the general manager, traded the Packers' 1974 second-round pick and 1975 second-round pick for the Dolphins' backup quarterback. His name was Jim Delgeza. He played 3 games in 1973. His quarterback rating in those 3 games was 30. It was like 30. It was like 32. So okay, and sorry to add some backup here, but before free agency, you had to trade players, right? Or trade draft picks to get players because you didn't have the kind of free agency like we had today. So it was always trading future picks. So in 73, he's trading 2 second-round picks, and that guy lasted for only a few games. All right, so in 1974, Dan Devine, same guy, before his last season as coach, he traded the first, second, and third round picks of 1975 and the first and second round pick of 1976 to sign 34-year-old John Hadle from the Rams. So 34. Okay, in early 1970s, a 34-year-old quarterback was equivalent to what?
50.
I was going to say Aaron Rodgers, but okay, yeah. I mean, somebody. Okay, now people think it's crazy that the Jets gave up what they gave up for Aaron Rodgers. You're talking about John Hadle, and we gave up. People at the time joked at it as a. They said it was like a trade done by a music conductor, because we gave up a 1, a 2, and a 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it was kind of one of those. It was funnier back then.
Yeah,
that was actually what I was known as. I'm not making that part up. There they are. Yeah, I won't even mention the other 2 guys.
Here, that's Aaron
Yeah.
Rodgers reincarnate right there.
That's it. Yeah, true. If you mix him with the lead singer from Procol Harum, did Whiter Shade of Pale, it's pretty good. Pretty good.
Jerry Taggy looks like he's about to get I don't want to say the word pounced on. Let's say that. He looks scared for his life.
He looked like Uncle Rico. Actually.
That's another one.
So
Hey,
they
every
picked
time
up
I hear
Hadle.
Uncle Rico. I can hear that steak slapping that dude in the face. Right?
So they traded for Hadle. Okay, he played in 1974, and then Dan Devine left to go coach Notre Dame. So if you watch Rudy, the second coach that doesn't care about Rudy, that's Dan Devine. Well, it's an actor, but that's the guy. Bart Starr came in 1975 and played Hadle for 1 season before he got rid of him. In 2 years, Hadle had 9 touchdown passes and 29 interceptions. That was his combined TD interception ratio in 2 seasons. Okay, so so they didn't have a pick. They didn't have their top 3 picks in 1975 or the top 2 picks in 1976. The 75 pick and the 76 pick were top 10 picks. And look what they got for it. Nothing. So in 1976, Bart Starr traded the 4th round pick of that year and the 3rd round pick of the next year for Lynn Dickey. Okay. So Lynn Dickey came in. He played just about all of 76, about 3/4 of 77, and was injured around November of 1977 until November of 1979. He missed 2 whole seasons straight. And it wasn't until 1980 that the Packers offense started averaging about 300 yards a game, because they didn't do it in the 70s, like the entire time.
Yeah. That's wild, man.
It's a lot of stats I know. That's just the doldrums of that kind of stuff. Now, in comparison to the Steelers drafted 4 future Hall of Famers in the 1974 draft alone. That's what other teams were doing at the time.
It's crazy. Great. And when you talk about Dan Devine, right, stepping in, and then you had, what's crazy is you had Lindy Infante, right? I think is how you say his name. He became the Packers head coach in 1988 through 91. A lot of people don't know this, but Michael Lombardi actually put together a list of potential coaches, right? For, I believe, I can't remember what team he was working for at the time. And he said that the Green Bay Packers actually chose Infante over Bill Walsh. And at the time, Michael Lombardi had settled on as offensive coordinator Mike Holmgren, a college coach for the San Francisco 49ers. He basically helped handpick him for the San Francisco 49ers offensive coordinator position. Now, what's crazy is the reason Bill Walsh wasn't hired in Green Bay, and I talked about this on a past pod, was because they reached out to Paul Brown, which was Bill Walsh's mentor, and said, hey, what do you think about Bill Walsh being a head coach? And literally Paul Brown told him that he does not have the mental toughness to be a head coach. Could you imagine if Bill Walsh had been the head coach in Green Bay?
God.
Bro, like, people say, well, we wouldn't have Joe Montana. You could say that, but Joe Montana, if I remember correctly, was like a 3rd-round pick or something. He was available. It wasn't like he was this, there's no way they could have drafted him. But just wild, man, the thin threads. I don't even have to mention Barry Sanders to not make Packers fans puke, because we, of course, we know we passed up on him. But just wild stuff. Andy, you got anything else before we let you go, brother?
Yeah. So, I mean, just to kind of wrap up, I mean, so Coward is saying that the Packers quarterback selections or quarterback view of things now is comparison to what I just explained. It's like, it's not even close. I mean, it's a ridiculous thing to say. So, as a state that likes milk and cheese and ice cream and all that kind of stuff, I would invite Colin Cowherd to come to Wisconsin and, as the saying goes, take a whiff of our dairy air.
I see what you did
get that
there.
one.
I see what you did there. Even a dumb redneck from Tennessee caught that.
So with Bears fans, and you guys who are there in Wisconsin know this, in the summer, we're happy to take all the Chicago fans' vacation money.
Yeah.
Right? Because they come up, which is fine, because in the fall, we're going to take your lunch money too.
Got him.
Let's go, dude. Let's go. I can't wait till week 1. I can't, man. It's going to be awesome.
You want to know what's really funny? Is he was bashing. I had to look up Rudy and why Rudy sucks. And I found this Deadspin article. And oh my God, I'm going to have to post this into our chat because it's just, it blasts. You know how, like, Ryan, I sent you that clip of how Louis C.K. blasts apart Good Will Hunting. Are you there, Ryan? No.
If you're talking to me, I can't hear you. Sorry.
Oh, you can't hear Jacob?
I'm trying to fix it. It's my stuff's broke, man. Just talk amongst yourselves.
Anyways, it's basically how it like craps all over the movie. And Andy, I love you, but you just made that movie. I used to love that movie, and then I'm reading some of these comments, and I realized, oh my God, that movie's horrible.
Hey, now here's what's crazy.
I love that movie.
It's a good movie, but like it's so unrealistic. Like, come on.
Yeah, I'm a Notre Dame fan, and I don't like the movie. Like, and I'm telling you, Irish fans get mad when I say that. I'm just being honest.
It's like the whole plot of the movie is like his family doesn't like him because he can't play football. It's like, come on, man.
It's about a kid in Harlan County, Kentucky named Clayton.
Yeah. It's like, then he gets on he wants to play, and all of his teammates are like, I'm gonna lay down my jersey because this guy that sucks.
I just
really
imagine
bad.
Ryan down here, dude. You're talking, Jacob. We're laughing, and everything. Ryan's gonna have no clue what he's saying.
I got it working, but I can't promise anything in the next 5 minutes.
All right, cool. Andy, we're gonna let you go, buddy. We appreciate you. Anything else, man?
Rudy does help John Favreau, his buddy of John Favreau, get a date, so that's good. That's who plays his friend. That's an early John Favreau.
Yeah, that's Vince Vaughn's buddy, right?
That's really John Favreau's one of his first movies.
Yeah,
I would think so.
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, all right. Well,
So, hey, there you go. That's why you listen to this pod, baby.
Exactly.
Hey, we appreciate
That's why you
dude.
come.
Okay. All right. We'll see you guys later. Thanks again.
Thank
We'll
you,
talk
Andy.
to you soon, pal.
Yep, bye-bye.
Be careful. All right. Ryan, dude, he brung it up. He brung up Colin Coward. It sounded like you went round 2 on him. I heard a little bit of that pod. What's crazy is, they try to draw this parallel, right? The quarterback purgatory and all. You're going back to the 70s and 80s. It's like, but you realize the Packers are doing totally the opposite of what they did back then. They're drafting and developing a quarterback and planning for the future, right?
Well, and then that's the thing that it's the 30 years isn't a fluke, and that's what everybody wants it to be. It's this big fluke that's only because of 2 quarterbacks. No, it's not. There's also a GM that came in and changed the entire culture and the way that we do things here, and everybody since then has followed in that line in terms of how we do things. And free agency is a big part of that. That didn't exist back then. Now it does. And we incorporated that in the way that we do things. And the way that they run this football team is the reason why they're so successful. Yes, the quarterbacks have a big part of that, but the reason they're not going to be the Lions and the reason that the Lions can't stop being the Lions is because of how the teams are run, period. So whether or not we're ever going to be as good as we were in 2020 or whatever, that's a separate discussion. But we're not going into the basement because teams don't go into the basement when they're run like the Green Bay Packers. That's going to prevent us from going there, and then it's just a matter of time before we get back on top. And that really just comes down to if we can find the right quarterback or not. But the whole discussion is that, Rodgers left, now we go to bottom of the division or bottom of the NFL is just it's mindless.
Yeah. It's crazy because we seen the Packers without Rodgers last year. Whether it was because of the injury or that was the drop off, but we seen what the Packers were without Rodgers, and we almost made the playoffs.
Right.
Well, now you retool and there was some kind of TikToker, Andy Herman, just blasting him. I absolutely loved it, but he was just like, "You did nothing to make your team better. You signed Jonathan Owens." And it's like, bro, there was a draft. What the hell are you talking about? Like, there was a draft, and we had young players. They got meaningful snaps that are going to be better this year with another full training camp. And, a quarterback, really, they probably have more chemistry with in Jordan Love than they did Aaron, to be honest with you, because of the whole OTA situation. It's just it's amazing, man. It's amazing. It's just like, I won't mention the name, but there was a radio show host that was talking about, Jordan Love and the quarterback position the other day. And Ryan put a tweet out, and basically the guy was like, what other quarterback has had success that threw this many interceptions in college? And literally Ryan in 2 minutes rattles off like 4 of which, if I remember correctly, were first ballot Hall of Famers.
I mean, it really was. And that was the thing. Like I heard, Clayton, what you posted where he was like, yeah, he sent me a couple things. First of all, I didn't send you anything. I was talking to the other guy. Second of all, I listed about 5 guys and I looked up probably 7. So it really wasn't that hard. Second of all, the idea that he said it had to be the final year. No, he didn't. He never said it had to be the final year. He's full of garbage about that. What he said is somebody that in his career had thrown that many interceptions, and beyond that, it doesn't even matter if it was in his final year or not. But the whole thing was completely stupid, and it wasn't just him. I listened to that part that you sent me again, Clayton, where he's like, he sent me one, and I guess that's the one. No. I also sent another one of Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson's another one.
Wow.
And that was very recent because his co-host was like, well, yeah, what was that, 40 years ago? Deshaun Watson was what, 6 years ago, 5 years ago? It was not very long ago. He came into the NFL and dominated. So and beyond, why are you even having that discussion? Why does that even matter? The thing that I said in my podcast about it is, okay, forget all of this. Explain to me why he got drafted at all. Because the way we're talking about him, based on how he did as a senior in college or whatever year it was, junior, why was he, forget he should have been a second-round pick. Why wasn't he undrafted? Why? Because you are the one that has to reconcile that, because the way you describe him and the way that he played, he should not have been drafted at all. You can't reconcile that. So that's your problem. You're the one that can't see all the positives that not just the Packers saw, but all 32 teams and every NFL draft analyst saw in him. Even the ones that said he's a second-round pick clearly saw he was way more talented than what he put on tape in his final season in college.
Yep. And what's crazy is they're so quick, and not specifically them, I haven't heard them say it, but many people in the media, much like Colin Cowherd, they're so quick to point out, well, they even traded up to get Jordan Love. He didn't fall to them. They traded up. First of all, he fell to a certain point where they said the value makes sense now. But you understand why they traded up? because there were other teams that were going to draft Jordan Love. So it's not only the Packers that had a first-round grade on him, but it was also other teams. So you're telling me you understand scouting better than NFL general managers for multiple teams. You got to get away from me with that crap. Like at some point you've got to lower the ego. And I understand they get clicks and on those big networks, the goal is let's create some shock value here and get people talking about us and talking about the topic. But it gets to the point where it's just embarrassing. And that's why I responded to that tweet you just sent out. And I was like, this only takes 2 seconds to like check. Like, how do people feel okay with going, you know what? I'm just going to put this out there, pretend like it's a fact, knowing darn well people can fact check it and shoot it right down. But then on top of that, I'm going to double down after they provide a list. Like, it's just crazy, dude.
Well, and it's funny too, because his whole thing was, I have yet to hear anyone on Twitter respond to this. Bro, have you looked? Why do you need someone on Twitter to tell you the answer? Look, what are you talking about?
Speaking of lists, I'm just that sparked a little thing in my brain. We're talking about lists here, as well as while we're pooping on Bears. I just thought it'd be just really great just to let's look at their top 10 receivers of all time and just see how that stacks up.
Thank you.
Number 1, I wish that I had the year, but I can guarantee you that at least 8 out of 10 of these were before most of us were born. So just let that sit in. Okay. So number 1, Johnny Morris. He played 121 games, received 356 passes. He's the number 1 receiver of all time for the Chicago Bears. He has 5,059 yards and 31 touchdowns. Awesome. Number 2, Harlan Hill, 89 games, 226 receptions, 46, 16, 40 touchdowns. Number 3, one guy that is probably in the modern era, which congratulations, Bears. Good for you. Alshon Jeffrey. Oh, my God. What a solid, great player. 63 games. He had 304 receptions, 4,549 yards with 26 touchdowns. Number 4, Walter Payton. 190 games, guys. 190 games. 492 receptions, 4,538 receptions, 15 touchdowns. Number 5, Mike Ditka. Okay, good. Cool. Number 6, Curtis Conway. Number 7, Matt Forte, the only other guy that's in this decade. Close. Number 8, Marty Booker with 3,800 yards, basically. Willie Gault, number 9. I have no idea who you are, sir. Number 10, Ken Kavanaugh. Sir. Is he a Supreme Court Justice? No. Number 11, Allen Robinson. 293 receptions, 3,561 yards. Number 11 all time in Bears receiving is 3,561 yards.
Yeah, and they didn't draft him, and they only had him for a few years. So
he's the worst.
If you just look at people they actually drafted, which I've looked at that before, we all know that their quarterback history is terrible. Their wide receiver history is not much further behind.
Let me scroll down to save us some time. Number 41, before it cut off my printer. Number 41 of all time, Gene Schroeder. 64 games, 104 receptions, 1,870 yards, guys, with 13 touchdowns. That's bad.
That's like a good season.
That's like a good season. For what I'm recording. I'm sorry, but
yeah. It's yuck. Dakota in the chat says, we have a great talent evaluator in Goody and a great offensive coach in LaFleur. I have faith they'll figure it out. You know, Ryan, you were talking about Detroit because I guarantee you listeners, probably not listeners, but if you said this to other fans, especially Lions fans, and said, you know, they're just a horrible organization, they go, well, this is a different general manager. No. It starts at the top. Right. It starts at the top with ownership. That's the same thing that's going on with, you know, it's no longer the Hallis family in Chicago. What is it? The McCaskies or whatever it is, right? And isn't it funny that you can go and say, okay, this is a culture issue. They don't know how to bring someone from the outside. When I say from the outside, someone who actually knows football and says, hey, look, we're going to trust you with our organization. Build it the right way. Build it the way a pro football team should be built. Instead, they want to lean on their business expertise, whether it's in the car industry or whatever it might be, whatever made them rich in the first place. And then they're going to pretend like, okay, we'll just incorporate that and we'll go out and build this awesome football team. right? And it never changes, which goes right to the argument. And I think I've heard Colin Cowherd say this before, that one of the Packers' biggest problems is that they don't have an owner. They don't have an owner. That's what happens when you got an owner, right there. You have horrible organizations they're just, it's kind of bred like that within the organization, right? And I believe Ryan froze up. Ryan, if you can hear us speak, wave. Does somebody got a gun to your head? What's going on over there?
Nope,
All right, he's
gone.
gone. Just like that. We're getting ready to wrap up here in a second anyway, but we appreciate everybody hanging out with us. I love what the Packers have done. I'm getting kind of excited. I think it's for 2025, Jacob, to see who takes over as the new president, for Mark Murphy, as his time is coming up. And kudos to Mark Murphy, man. You talking about a guy that I think he's done just an excellent job. Bob Harlan cast that vision for what he wanted Lambeau Field to be, right? And he created the atrium, which sounds so silly, but he just knew if we can get the money together to create this atrium so we can put a few things inside it that makes this a year-round destination, it's going to change everything about the Packers. And Mark Murphy, of course, taking that, running with it, creating the whole Titletown district. They're continuing to buy up property. And it's amazing what they've done out there. You've got to have visionaries like that. And no one better than someone like Mark Murphy, who's got a football background. Do you know about his football background, Jacob?
I do, actually. He was a very highly effective NFL player. Wasn't he like a safety or a cornerback?
He played for several years, played for Washington, actually led the league in interceptions one year as a safety. Mark Murphy did. Everybody looks at Mark Murphy like, oh, look at Papa Opie up there. Ain't never picked up a football. Don't know what he's talking about. Whatever.
He's played, man. He's got thumped.
Yeah. Oh, you know it, dude. You know it. I love it, dude. Love it, love it, love it. So as we get ready to wrap up, anything else you want to hit on, Jacob? You got anything else you want to touch on?
Just a random note that I thought was interesting. I didn't realize that Fangio is going to the Dolphins defense, which that could be just one of those things where it's like, if Tua can stay healthy, they got those wide receivers. I almost think it's a shoo-in that Dalvin Cook's going to get signed over there. I know that's not Packers stuff. I'm just talking NFL football stuff.
No,
just
absolutely.
Interesting in my mind.
Anytime you talk coaching hires and scheme, I'm all about it.
That Vic Fangio defense, though, going to Miami where they have a really quick, fast team, like that could be set up for some crazy success. As far as the Packers go, I'm just again, we talked about it last episode. We're losing 3 players on defense. I really, really want this defense to be. We always talk about it. They're great on paper, but I want this to be the year, man. Imagine if this is Aaron Rodgers leaves and maybe it's dumb luck, maybe it's whatever, and all of a sudden our defense is like number 1, number 2, number 3, and Love doesn't have to do really anything more than just be a manager, because we can't expect a lot from this guy. I mean, in theory, we can expect a lot as far as like we want. I say it all the time. I think we're gonna get 10 wins. Realistically, when I dumb it down and I think about it, I'd be happy if we got 8 tops, because he's a first-year quarterback. He's very raw. But that being said, I mean, why not? Realistically, I really do think that we could hit 12 or 13 wins. I think we need to maybe temper expectations, and then we should maybe just be ready to see a 6, 7, 8 win season. But if we see that progression out of Love, then I think we should all just be happy, man. It's just it's a good time to be hopeful. I'm just excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way I look at the schedule every year, I do it different than most people. I break down the schedule. I walk through it once and I go, okay, where are the surefire wins? We know there's no surefire win in the NFL, but you could still go through a schedule and go, here's the games that I think we have the greatest chance of winning, right? That kind of tier of games. All right, bang. How many wins do you got? Write that number down. Then you go, okay, you go right back to the schedule, and there's a bunch of voids there, right, of games that you haven't checked yet. You can see it probably right over my shoulder over here, right there somewhere. What I do then is I go back and go, okay, what are surefire losses? Again, nothing guaranteed. Any given Sunday, anything can happen. I get it. But you go through and go, what games do I think there's a pretty darn good chance that we're going to lose this game? You fill those in. And then typically you're left with a handful of games where you go, that could go either way. The number I come up with is between 6 and 10 wins. That's what I've got. Now, Some people say if they finished 8 wins, that's the worst thing possible. They wouldn't have a high pick. They'd have no shot at Caleb Williams if indeed Jordan Love doesn't pan out, blah, 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 blah. Listen, the goal is to progressively get better. Name the franchise that just flipped the switch and they just went great, right? I think the Dolphins did it one year. They went from worst to first in their division, and then they fell right back off, right? Yep. It's incremental success, and it's approaching it from a culture standpoint of, look, we're creating a culture of winning, period, case closed. If they come out this year and they win 6 games, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. As long as we know what we have in Jordan Love. I don't want to say what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say what I shouldn't say. The worst case scenario for the Packers this year is that Jordan Love goes down early and we don't get a real view of what Jordan Love is.
100%.
That's the worst thing that could happen. Now, the best thing to me, that's why I'm not looking at this season going, man, this is going to suck if we have a bad year. No. If he balls out, he's the quarterback for the next 10 years, whatever it is.
Yeah.
If he falls completely flat, we go, okay, we know what we got there. The contract structured in a way that we can cut bait next year, draft a quarterback, or even keep him for one more year, give him one more shot. Who knows? He might catch a spark. Now you've got a deep quarterback room, right? If you do land a high first-round pick at quarterback and Jordan Love pans out as well. So that's kind of how I see it, man. That's kind of how I look at it. John in the chat here. Let's see what he's got to say. I've been watching the chat over here. John says, this is Love's 4th year. He knows the playbook. No excuses for less than 8 wins.
I kind of agree.
Yeah, I do too, but wins are not a quarterback stat.
Yeah.
I used to get mad when people said that. And it's true. It's true. Wins are not a quarterback stat. It may be how they're judged, but so by that right there, no excuses for less than 8 wins, John. Tell me this. If he comes out and he throws for 35 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, wins MVP, or is in the running for MVP, and they win 6 games somehow, some way, because the defense is absolutely horrible, you tell me you're moving on from Jordan Love?
Right.
You're not. So that's and again, I'm not the tell-all, end-all, right? I'm not saying I know everything. I'm not trying to act like a know-it-all. That's just the way I look at it. Wins are not a quarterback stat. Joe Montana. People always talked about Joe Montana. That he was the greatest of all time, this and that. If he's the greatest of all time, aside from Tom Brady, who has recently unseated him, then you put Joe Montana on the worst team in the league and tell me what they do. Put Joe Montana on the Chicago Bears, and what would their record be? I'm sorry, man. We've seen him in Kansas City, had a little bit of success, but if I remember correctly, he had a Hall of Famer, Marcus Allen. He had all kinds of people around him in Kansas City too when he won there, right? That was after Marcus Allen went from Oakland, Los Angeles, whatever you want to call it, the Raiders at the time, comes over to Kansas City too, and that's how I look at it, man. It takes more than just a quarterback. It does, and it's about a winning culture and putting talent around that quarterback. Now, you take Patrick Mahomes and put him on the Chicago Bears, they're going to be significantly better. Wouldn't be surprised if they're knocking on the door getting in the playoffs. Now, instead, they got Justin Fields, and I just don't – like I said, man, there's a chance. There's a chance he could break out. I don't see it. And when people say he's going to break out, I say, I need you to get on FanDuel or one of these gambling sites, and I want you to put $1,000 on it right now and shoot that screenshot on over, waiting on it. And if they don't do it, then you're lying. That's the way I see it. That's the way I see it. And it's the same way with me talking about these win-loss totals, man. It's easy for people to get excited and say, hey, yeah, we're going to win this many games. Okay, cool. Go put the money on it. That's what Lombardi was talking about the other day. He was just like, if people think Jordan Love is if Jordan Love is the real deal, then bet on the Packers to make the playoffs. Because I'm telling you, this is a good football team that's around. It really is.
I almost swore. The whole team is great, other than the unknown. And again, as Ryan says, unknown doesn't mean bad; it just means unknown. So
yeah, absolutely.
Let's go in it with a little bit of confidence. It'd be great. Yeah. Packer fans unite.
That's the thing. I'll wrap up with this. The last 3 years, Jacob, has been stressful because you've got one of, if not the best quarterback in the league, right? And everybody's expecting you to win 13 games. And it's, to me, it was like, I never came away from a win going, man, that was a great win. It was glad we didn't lose. Glad we didn't lose. Now we're looking at it from a different perspective. I think you can really find some enjoyment in that. And we're the underdogs. I'm screaming it to the top of my freaking lungs, dude. They started it. Let's finish it. They started the whole underdog thing. Let's embrace it. You're right, man. Yeah, we're going to finish last in the NFC North, man. Now, who knows? Maybe we could shock a few people. I love it, dude. Bet against us. Bet against us. And Jordan Love's got that calmness to him, man, that I don't know.
Yeah.
I keep saying it. There's something there. There's something I can't quite put my finger on, but I'm impressed with the dude. Jair Alexander, yeah, he's going to stick up for his teammates, but he's not going to say what he said if Jordan Love is not a starting caliber quarterback. Aaron Jones ain't going to say that if he's not a starting caliber quarterback. Brian Gutekunst is not going to trade Aaron Rodgers unless he knows that Jordan Love can be a starting quarterback.
I mean, think about that.
Yeah. I'm telling you, dude, it's
when you think about that, like just like you just said that, Clayton, that's so simple to me. Brian Gutekunst isn't going to trade Aaron Rodgers unless he's at least 90% sure that Love is going to come in there and at least be serviceable. I mean, that right there alone. Brian Gutekunst, if you're a Gutekunst hater, you're immediately going to be like, well, that's why he sucks, blah, blah, blah. If you are a little bit more, I love him personally. I think he's been amazing. I'm a homer, but I mean, if you immediately say, "Oh, that's a horrible thing," like that basically tells you your thought process there, right? So I just think that we should trust in the process. Every single time, every draft, every free agent signing, we always say, "Oh my God, what are they doing? These guys are idiots. Why don't you sign blah 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 blah?" And then all of a sudden, Devondre Campbell, Russell Douglas, Keyshawn Nixon. All of a sudden, Rudy Ford. We have all these guys where it's like, oh, I guess the guys that do this for a living that make multi-million dollars every year probably know a little bit more than I do.
Yeah,
what a shocker. Who would have thought?
Okay, it doesn't mean people can't have opinions, right? And we've disagreed in the past. It's totally cool. But yeah, at the end of the day, that's the perspective you got to put it in. But Nate the Great in the house says 8 to 9 wins. Nate, I think that's very, very, very reasonable, very realistic.
Yeah.
I think they could catch a break on 2 or 3. And come away with 10 or 11, and they could drop the ball on 2 or 3 and be around 6, But I think 8 to 9 is, if everything goes as planned, I could see that. But man, I just cannot wait for week 1, just like the Lumberjack band that we started with, man, rolling into Chicago to take on the big bad Chicago Bears. And don't let them forget it. Don't let them back away from it. All these talking heads talking about Justin Fields is going to be an MVP candidate. And the Bears are going to make the playoffs. I think that idiot on NFL Network, Adam Rank or whatever the heck his name is, I think he's picked the Bears to win 12 games or something. It's like, okay, you're going to go from the worst team in the league to winning 12 games because you signed 2 linebackers? What are we talking about here? Like, and it may happen, but I don't see it. And again, if that's what you feel, guys out there on Twitter, guys and gals that are just trumpeting this is a different team. They're going to go, just shake the world up. Just do me a favor. Quick little picture of that betting ticket of how much money you put on the win total for the Bears. I guarantee you won't find it. So I'm ready to get out of here. Jacob, you got anything else, buddy?
No, man, let's get out.
All right. Hey, we appreciate everybody hanging out in the chat with us. Jonathan, John, Nate the Great, Dakota, everybody just dropping through. We really, really appreciate your time. Also, joining us tonight, we had Tim right there in Green Bay, Andy in Kansas. Andy bringing some history. I love it, dude. And that mustache on that cap. What was his name again? Del Gazo? What was his name?
I can't remember.
Dude, we talked about Rudy. We talked about Dan Devine. The only thing we didn't talk about tonight was milk, right?
Yeah. Janelle, what's up?
Yeah, Janelle wasn't in the chat tonight. I think she understands.
She got offended.
Don't you be taking my milk, dude. You kidding me? So, all right. We're out of here, guys. We appreciate everybody taking the time to hang out with us. For those of you listening on the pod, thank you for making us a part of your work day. As always, let's go out and be the change we want to see in the world and go Pack Go.
On the fake, Rodgers lets it fly, has Watson, he's got it on his feet and he's in for the touchdown! That might be the biggest catch of this young receiver's career from Christian Watson. You can see him, it's just press man. They talk about his speed, his ability to get behind the defense. It's just a matter of can he catch it. That's a great job tracking the ball. He just just took a big sigh of relief. Look at his buddies greeting him on the sideline, man. That's got to feel good.